the death penalty goes against our Eighth Amendment rights as American citizens. If you remember back to government class, the Eighth Amendment states that no one shall be cruelly or unusually punished. And every single day, when people are put to death, they are lethally injected over and over until they finally die, or they're put in a gas chamber until they suffocate after hours, or they're even hung, like the old days of Salem witch trials. So today I'm going to be talking about why the death penalty, capital punishment, should be abolished, and I have a guest, my little sister. So, a couple reasons why the death penalty should be abolished. Well, when they have there's plenty of reasons. They treat it completely unfairly for people that commit murders. They have absurd costs for just putting people to death, and it has no effect on the crime rate whatsoever as a deterrent. So, to begin with, what is capital punishment and why do we have it? So, capital punishment is something that we've had for the longest times and can be dated to ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamia, all sorts of places where if you were to commit simple crimes like stealing or murdering, rape, any sort of crime, you'd be put to death. Well, in America today, we don't have, the death penalty for those who steal from a store or don't pay for their bills or whatever. It's a little bit less lenient, but we still have the death penalty for people that commit homicides, mess with aircraft, force people into suicide, terrorism, all sorts of different things that we have for the death penalty. And in logic and reason, they are reasonable as to why you would put someone to death. But at the same time, there are more humane ways of putting people to death than letting them sit in a gas chamber for minutes on end and having them suffocate slowly and painfully, or missing the IV for an injection and making them suffer even longer. There are more humane ways of doing it. But to begin with, the death penalty is currently put into place as a deterrent. If you don't kill someone, you won't be killed, right? Okay, you're okay. You're fine. Anyway, capital punishment is supposed to stop murder rates, but actually it's quite the opposite. I'm going to show you a photo from my slideshow, and I'll email the slideshow to you. But as you can see from this graph right here, the top line representing the murder rates in states that have the death penalty versus states that don't have the death penalty. And the top line shows that states that have the death penalty actually have a higher murder rate than states that do not have the death penalty, having a margin between 200,000, which is a huge difference between the years of 1990 and 2010. So to that dilemma, why do we have the death penalty if it doesn't deter murders or homicides or any sort of acts of terrorism of any kind? Why do we have it if that's the case? Not only is that a problem, but even if you were to commit a homicide or murder someone or anything, you might not even be sentenced to death. First of all, the capital punishment is treated like a sort of death lottery. Every year there's like 16,000 homicides that are committed in the United States, but only 120 inmates are sentenced to death. That's a huge difference. That means that 0.75% of people that commit homicides in the United States are actually put to death. You would be more likely to win a gold medal in the Winter Olympics than you would be to be if you were to kill someone and be then put to death. The rate of that is so low. So why do we have the death penalty if it doesn't decrease the number of murders that are committed by states that have the death penalty? And even if you have the death penalty, why is it not used more, right? What's the point of it if we don't use it? It's almost as useless as having pickles when you work at an ice cream parlor. Another thing that's a big problem with the death penalty is that putting people through capital punishment and sentencing them to death is just an outrageous cost. So, in 1995, Washington County, Oregon, there were 3 murder cases. And in those 3 murder cases, they cost upwards of $1.2 million for 3 cases. And only one of the 3 people were actually sentenced and put to death. I know, you're having a hard time. I'm so sorry. I'm almost done, okay? Anyway, the cost of that alone is ridiculous. Not only that, but the cost, the cost of having defense and prosecutions in each of those states, because you have to have the defense and the prosecution for each of these trials because no one wants to be hired for them, costs about $9 million every year. $9 million. So that $9 million can be put to better things than sentencing people to death. Why are we paying so much money just to have someone lethally injected or gas or whatever we do now? It depends on the state too. Not only are people being sentenced and put to death, but quite a number of them are completely innocent half the time, because there are cases in the United States where you could be accused of robbing a bank and might not even have done it. You could be found innocent after you've been put in jail for 6 years. Well, that's not the case for the death penalty. You don't have 6 years to live. If you're being put to death, here, I'll put you down. If you're being put to death, you don't have 6 years to gather evidence that prove that you're innocent. You have months, days, hours maybe, depending on how soon you will be sentenced to death. So, in the case of several people that are put and sentenced to death, they don't have the chance to prove their innocence half the time. After 19 men were executed between the years of 1983 and 2019, 17 men were executed and then found innocent after they were put to death. So why do we let this happen? I mean, sure, you could argue that we should have a longer time period between the time that they're sentenced to death and then put to death, but what's the point if, even more people are going to be proven innocent and don't have that time? So, on average, 4% of death row inmates are proven innocent, which doesn't seem like a lot in retrospect, but 4% is still 4%. A human life is still a human life, innocent or not innocent. If proven innocent after the murder or execution, what's the point of dealing with it in the first place? So, in conclusion, death penalty is just as bad as claiming a woman's a witch because she can read, or saying someone has committed a crime, didn't commit a crime, sentenced to jail for years just to be put to death. There are several cases in the United States where men, women, even kids in juvie are innocent of whatever they've done, and yet have to spend years of their lives suffering for it. So, in conclusion, we shouldn't have the death penalty. It's completely against our Eighth Amendment rights of being against cruel and unusual punishment. And it's just wrong morally to kill someone for killing. It's not a very Christian thing to do.